stoked to be here. Stoked to share some of my knowledge and know-how with you. So this talk is about building, scaling, and what's really most important in this whole thing is retaining your tech team. So yeah, let's dive in. So the roadmap for today is quite simple. So I'm going to talk about myself for a little bit in the beginning. We're going to talk about today's talent landscape, which, as you might imagine, is clusterfucked, to say the least. Then we're going to, swift through three things: so building a team, scaling a team, retaining a team. Bunch of tips and hacks, and then we'll get to Q&A hopefully. And I do expect Q&A to be the most beneficial sort of part of this keynote. So I really do hope you're going to have some questions. Rules for the talk. I really would like this to be an interactive talk. I don't want to be sitting here talking. So if you have a question or a comment, make sure you raise your hand up and we talk. I'll share the slides so you don't have to take photos or make notes, God forbid. If there is something up, bring it up. I have been doing this keynote at 2 a.m. and I have a little baby at home, so there might be some errors or typos. So if there is something weird in there, be sure to let me know. Again, Q&A, most value to you, I think. And again, hopefully I'll be asking some questions. Before we begin, is there anything, given the type or the topic of the talk that I have, that you would like to learn today? What would you like to learn? Go ahead.
How to motivate developers to
How to
work.
motivate, yeah, that's exactly. It's actually a great topic, and this is something that we all struggle with. I do struggle with. Well, I mean, I've been in the industry for 20 years almost, and it changes. But I'll touch on this definitely. Anybody?
How to keep them?
Yeah,
longer.
retain them. Yeah, that's one of the points.
How to understand what are they talking about.
Okay, I struggle with that too.
How to resolve conflicts between developers.
Okay. We'll get to that, totally. What sort of, I want to try to, manage your expectations, and there are some things that I'm not going to be talking about. I'm not going to be throwing around some bullets. What works for me does not necessarily have to work for you. So this is something you need to understand, that your mileage may vary. So I work at a specific organization, and you probably work at different organizations, and therefore some of the things that I will bring up might not work, where you work. And then I'm not going to say lies. I'm a very bullshit person, so it's going to be brutal at points. Who am I, and why should you care about whatever I have to say? I have been doing apps, collectively apps, before the term apps was coined. So I'm looking at people here trying to estimate your age. Palm OS, Symbian OS, does that ring a bell to some of you? So before iPhones and Androids, we've had this very archaic devices, and building apps for them was really a pain in the ass, so that was sort of where I started. I am currently a CTO, so Chief Technical Officer at Intent. We're going to talk about Intent in a sec. Previously, these are some of the things that we do at Intent. So we, primarily do software services. We do engineering services for companies, be it for startups or all the way to scale-ups and corporates. We do venture building. This is something that we're spinning up right now, and we also do investing from time to time. So some of our customers are early-stage startups, and we, sometimes if there is an opportunity, we invest into some of them. I'm an ex-founder, as Veronica said. I've had my own startup. I raised funding. I've exited that startup, so that I've sort of went through the entire, you might want to call it a happy path of a startupper. I've been at VC for a while, so after we shut down the operations of Abetica, I came on board to a VC that funded us and worked as an entrepreneur in residence for a little bit, which was also a great experience because it sort of let me have this perspective of both sides of the table. I know how it is to raise funding, and I know how to invest in people. I mentor every once in a while. at programs like Launchpad, ReactorX. I'm really into hackathons. I have a lot of gray hair. That's because I've been spending my youth nights hacking and not sleeping. I'm really interested in voice UIs, AR, which is going to be, I promise, is going to be a really big thing. So if you're thinking about how to be employable in 3 years time, probably look into AR. Friendly tip. Fancy navigation. That's a little bit about intent. Here are some of the logos. Some of them may be familiar to you. Some of them are more niche. However, again, we've worked with a number of companies from big enterprises like these and small but very well-known startups like, does that work? That's pretty badass, right? Like Aura or HQ Trivia, which is a bittersweet history. If you know what went down there, iHeartRadio, a very big, well-known streaming company out of the US, and a few others. So when I was preparing for the talk, I was doing a bunch of research and a bunch of topics, and I arrived at the conclusion that we are essentially screwed, and we can end this talk right now with this conclusion, and it's going to be pretty much accurate. The situation on the market that has to do with talent and tech talent and availability of tech talent and expectations of tech talent is insane. We thought the COVID is gonna, it's gonna make waves, and all of a sudden there's gonna be a lot of people in the market, and it's just the contrary. This joke that was floating around LinkedIn when it says, like the chief whatever officer was trying to do digital transformation for like 10 years, and COVID did that in one. So that's what happened. And there is a massive shortage of tech talent. Frankly, it's as bad. We've been in business, Intent has been in business for almost 14 years, and we have problems attracting talent. And it's a universal problem. Everybody has that. No matter if you're Intent, if you are one-man startup, or if you're Google, everybody struggles with that. It's gotten to a point where we actually have to drop projects because of not having enough talent. And we're going to talk about the reasons, some of the reasons why. And we're going to talk about some solutions, how to tackle that situation. But again, collectively and looking from the high level, we're pretty much screwed. This is an insane post from Hacker News. Go ahead and read it. I'll give you 10 seconds to read it. But it very nicely outlines the situation that we're in right now. And it's gotten worse. It's getting worse. That post is probably from about a year ago. It has been like downhill ever since in terms of talent. But it's working out for some people pretty well. I'll give you another one. There are those like recruitment agencies. So this is a true story. I swear to God. One of the recruitment companies tried to sell to us our own guy, which is just a very bizarre sort of situation to find yourself in. So yeah, it's again, I'm setting your expectations. We're screwed. If you guys, how many of you are founders? Okay. You are screwed squared, because you don't have the resources, when you are going against Google or Apple or us or anybody else. So let's talk about today's talent landscape. I talked about this a second ago. So COVID-19 did its damage, but the damage was lasting about a quarter. We've had one client go belly up completely. So they shut down operations almost immediately, leaving us with a bunch of folks who had nothing to do all of a sudden. However, that situation turned around in about a quarter, which is insane. And ever since then, it's been crazy times. You know how in software services you have this like never-ending cycle of feast and famine. Like all of a sudden you have way too much work, and then there's zero work, nobody coming in, and it rinses and repeats. So ever since COVID hit, we are in almost infinite feast, like all the time, and we cannot, literally, we cannot satisfy everybody that we would like to feed. There is about that many. I made this number up, obviously, but there is an insane amount of engineers that are just missing, that are not there. The education system is sort of struggling to spit out a fraction of that. And there are other ways to train engineers. There are boot camps. There's Lambda schools, and other incarnations of Lambda school around the world. But still, they are struggling to fill in that gap, and it's going to be getting worse because everything is going digital, right? How many of you know this that website? Levels of AI. So but it's a really nice website that collects data points about the compensation of engineers worldwide, and along with the compensation, you also get information about benefits. And just to again to show you what are you going against, because you're going against everybody. COVID has set the level, the playing field so level that Google or Apple or everybody else, they're hiring here as well, and they're hiring in Indonesia as well. They're hiring everywhere. There's no boundaries anymore, frankly. So you are going for L3 engineer. L3 engineer is sort of like a mid-level engineer at Google. So you're going against the base salary of $130,000 a year. Every year they're getting about almost $40,000 of stock, of Google stock, that almost goes up all the time, which is a very nice incentive. The bonus of 20K. That's just insane. These are the benefits at Google that you get when you sign up to Google. Like free dinners, free lunches. It's gimmicks, right? But it all stacks up. And when you're a founder, and I know how it is, as a matter of fact, I knew how it is, because when I was starting a company, the dynamics of the market and what Google offered was a fraction of what they offer right now. So you're going against the previous slide in that, which is pretty dramatic to start with. These are some, again, I was doing a research for that keynote, and these are some fucked up screenshots that I found. There is, I'm not sure how many of you know Polish, but last time an Android candidate came up to us with 2 years of experience and asked for 24K PLN net. So 2 years of experience at 24K, which is just...
in a couple of years, senior .NET developer.
Yeah. 3 years of experience, 150 Zs per hour. For people are paying 24K for a recommendation of a hire when they hire them, right? So yeah, this is the landscape. This is what you're going up against. So yeah, so let's talk about building a tech team. So I'm gonna this presentation is gonna go like I will be sharing some sort of universal truth that I believe in. Again, some of these will work and some of these will not work for you guys. The first thing that I wanted to talk about when building a tech team is you need a CTO. You need a person, a single person who will own the entire technology that you're building. Sadly, this is something that you shouldn't be outsourcing. There are companies like mine who do software services, but take it from me, and I think I'm probably one of the best people to tell you that you need someone on your end to own the technology. So you need to have someone who will own front and the back end infrastructure, someone who can make and educated decisions about where you're going, what stack you're going to use, what sort of tool chain you will be sticking with. So you need a CTO. And even though there is, I can make a really strong argument about outsourcing work outside of your startup, you need someone technical. It can be a CTO, it can be a technical co-founder, name it however, you need someone on board who can speak zeros and ones. That's the bottom line. A lot of people ask me, should we host our infrastructure in the cloud or should we buy servers? When building a tech team and when you are struggling with pretty much everything, and trust me, I've been in your shoes. I've started a company. Just before having a baby, I thought that was the hardest thing I did. After having a baby, I sort of realigned, but it was the hardest thing I did for a very long time. So starting a company is hard. Whenever you are faced against a decision of whether or not use a cloud or physical servers or infrastructure, always go with cloud. It's much cheaper, much easier, much less maintenance. It's much more flexible. So just a word of advice on the infrastructure. I'm big on quotes. Mark Cuban, you probably know this guy. I like this quote. So as far as technology goes, go with what you know. So if you have a CTO who is proficient in, say PHP because he's the hardcore, old school PHP guy, and everybody now on the internet sort of makes fun of PHP because the dinosaur language. Stick with PHP, trust me. Go with what you know. Use the technologies that you're familiar with. So it's like with wine, right? Gary Vaynerchuk. So he makes fun of people who ask, what wine goes with fish? I mean, whatever you like. So it's similar with technology and tech stacks. Whatever you're familiar with, stick with it. But make sure that the selection, that the choice you're making is reasonable. A few things to consider. Availability of tech talent, right? You might have a great PHP engineer, but trust me, there is not a lot of PHP engineers looking for work because there are so many other sexy technology stacks or languages or frameworks, and you're going to have a hard time finding an engineer to sit down and work with your CTO in PHP. Think about future-proofing your work, right? So some of the languages are maybe not obsolete, but you can tell just by looking at Stack Overflow or some stats around the web what sort of languages have future or which ones don't. So for instance, when you're doing an app on iOS, you probably don't want to use Objective-C, right? Objective-C is something that I used to build apps with when I started. Now there's Swift, and everybody does everything in Swift. And whenever you go to a conference and they all show code examples, you're not going to find almost any Objective-C code out there because everybody's doing Swift. So again, this is something to consider. Finally, simplicity. So again, don't overcomplicate it. I would rather say focus on your business whenever you start a startup and build a tech team. So try to keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. So follow that. Just again, a brief comment. This is, of course, pretty archaic. You have Rails, Django, CodeIgniter, and the fact of the matter is they all do the exact same fucking thing, right? You can do pretty much any web app with any of these. So again, that proves my point of using whatever you're familiar with, rather than whatever is sexy or whatever everybody's using right now. Because again, you are going against everybody, battling for talent. So make sure that you're comfortable with your technology choices and they're not going to bite you down the road. Again, this is getting technical, but languages. So whatever we've had here, so Ruby on Rails, Python and Django, and PHP and CodeIgniter. None of these scale. What scales is the infrastructure. So if you architect your infrastructure, so the underlying cloud that you host your app on, that's what scales. Doesn't matter what language or what framework you're going to build with it. So yeah, make sure that you keep this in mind. look for folks with complementing skills to yours. However, I would recommend when looking, at least for the early tech hires, to have at least some overlap, not a lot of overlap. So you have those like Venn diagrams, so make sure that those circles are not overlapping too much because it's going to cause friction. No overlap is also bad because you're not going to have a lot of sort of discussion vectors to talk about. So make sure that you are recruiting people that you have at least some topics to talk about, to exchange thoughts, and to discuss and even to fight about. But again, if you don't, it sucks. Whenever looking for early tech hires, I always repeat that. There are two types of people. There are sort of those Renaissance developers who know a little bit of everything, but not deep. And I always prefer these guys over the hardcore specialists that focus on just one tiny thing, and they're just the masters of their skills. However, they don't give a shit about anything else, the context. So your early tech hires, potentially CTO-s, or like the guys who are going to be building your technology, should be generalists. The guys who like to get their hands dirty, hackers who are not afraid to use something new or try something new in order to save time. So that was about this conceiving your early tech hires. We're getting to scaling a tech team. So once you have a few engineers on board, you probably build as fast as you can because of your investors, or God forbid the FFFs, friends, family, fools, they're on your ass trying to get you to ship stuff, and you ship stuff, but you ship stuff fast, compromising quality. Make sure that before you decide, you pull the trigger on scaling your tech team, you're ready, you raised your post-seed round, so like an A round or a bridge financing to get you to A round. Make sure that you spend some time repaying your tech debt. This will come around and potentially even kill whatever you're doing, because if you're building up technology on broken foundation, it's not going to work. You need a process. I'm a hardcore engineer. I do hackathons. I hack all the time. But when you're trying to mature and when you're scaling a tech team, you're sort of on your, like the road to being mature, like a company. You need a process. And I don't care if it's going to be like Agile, Kanban, Scrum, whatever. You can mix and match. So like do whatever, but you actually need a formalized process around software or product lifecycle. It's probably very unappealing to you guys as hardcore battery drinking acid startuppers, but trust me, when you're scaling a tech team, in order to sort of make sure that you're not going to run into trouble, you need you really need a process. Whatever process you're going to select, make sure you give it a thorough trial. So if you decide on Scrum, that's fine, but make sure that you run with it for at least a quarter. That's when you see the effects. That's when you get over that initial friction, that initial frustration with using something new. So give it a go. However, make sure that you give enough of a runway for it to fly. Scrum, this is something that we use. How many of you know Scrum? A lot, of course. So I'm not going to get into the details, but it turns out to work at companies like ours, so companies that do software services. However, a very surprising thing that I found very recently is that Scrum really exists in that sort of service realm and product realm. So if you look at like Amazon, Apple, Datadog, Facebook, Google, and all the big tech stars, none of them have a central methodology. So you may think that a behemoth like Amazon, they have sort of a top-down approach where they say everybody should follow that. Turns out they don't. None of them do. They don't have like one single process that they all follow. What is their most popular process? It turns out not a lot of people are doing like typical Scrum or Kanban. A lot of them are doing like typical plan, build, and iterate. So like sort of the waterfall. It's a short iteration, so it's not like a typical waterfall that you're going to see at P&G or any other big corporate. But again, just this is like an FYI. So like, not a lot of people, despite the hype of Scrum and being agile, not a lot of big tech are actually using it. I know it's cliche. Hire slow, fire fast. This is a general truth. Be very cautious of when you're hiring. Make sure that you have enough work for that person. However, start looking early. This is the best advice I can give you. Again, the market is insane right now. So if you even think that you might have a need for another engineer joining your team in, I don't know, a quarter, 2 quarters even outside of now, you should start looking. You should start your activities around your employer branding. You should get your word out. I mean, we're going to get into what should you attract engineers with, but yeah, again, start working early, but be very cautious with your hires. And if something is not working, you fire fast. There's way too much damage that someone may do if you sort of try to make it work for a very long time and you see it's not working. How it is with a bad relationship, you try to fix it and it just spirals down. So it's the same with tech talent. And in an early stage startup, there's so much of value that is based on that talent that it's just not worth it to go spiraling down. So hire slow, hire fast. Hire for culture. This is something that Facebook does pretty well, although I do believe that they're just an evil company all around. I don't know how they can sleep at night, but this entire culture around doing things the hacker way, building things fast, breaking them, fixing them, and doing that whole circle again. That unique culture is, I think, the only place I know where it really works. And try to find yours. There are a lot of things that we've learned at Intent when we sat down, because believe it or not, we started doing things around culture, what's our mission, what's our sort of vision, what are the values that we believe in, just very recently. I mean, we, for the very most part of the company, we've been called InfoMobile, and we rebranded a few years ago. We've been really tired about explaining ourselves in every meeting for 15 minutes about this name and that the apps are not the only thing that we do. So we changed our name to Intent, and along with that rebrand, we didn't only change the logo, we changed the whole way we think about ourselves. So we did the whole exercise with the culture, with values, with branding, and to be very honest with you, I think this is the #1 differentiator that actually has impact on hiring versus InfoMobile. Now, when we have a candidate, not only do we test them against, like, do they know tech? Do they have the chops of, the engineering chops that we expect? But we also tried. That wasn't me, right? So we also try to, sort of test them against our values, our culture, to see if they fit. And if they fit, they're going to be great addition to the team. If they don't, it's going to be a never-ending struggle because they don't believe in this stuff we do. Retain the knowledge. People churn. We're going to talk about how to address the churn in a sec, but people will churn, people will quit. Your engineers will be approached by Google, Apple, Facebook, us probably, and a lot of other companies on a daily basis. So they will eventually quit. So make sure that you retain the knowledge, especially when you scale your organization. When you hire more people, make sure that this process around hiring, around onboarding them is frictionless. Make sure that they have a place where they can study your culture, your values, your the details about your tech stack, what sort of tool chain that you use. All that I believe in scaling company, it has to be documented and make it's your job as a founder to make sure that this stuff is retained somewhere. So when someone quits, they don't take the knowledge with them. Finally, we're getting to retaining a tech team. This is very hard. It's a problem that I don't think we've solved entirely. I don't think anybody has solved that entirely. So again, the universal truth is the fact that you cannot compete with money. Apple is a $2 trillion company, and you cannot compete with them. And the fact of the matter is, you're going to pay less than Google and anybody else. You go to Apple because you love your culture. You're in love with their, the mission that they do, that they're on. So you cannot compete with Infinite. What you can compete with is a lot of other things, like the ownership. At Apple, when you go to Apple or you go to Google, you don't have a lot of freedom. You don't have a lot of, ownership around the product. You are one of a gazillion engineers who are working on, just like a little bit of machine learning thing. You know how many people are working on iPhone's camera system? 850. That's insane. 850 people just working on that software that processes the images through those lenses. There are 3 lenses, but again, it's 850 people. So when you are trying to retain the talent, I think single most valuable thing that you can give to people is the ownership and the control over not only the stack and the tools that they would like or they would want to use at your company, but also have an actual influence over the product that you're building. And this is something that you're not going to get anywhere else other than early stage startups. And there's a lot of people that really devour that. They want that. So ownership. Nothing, literally nothing, beats building features. I mean, there's this saying about remember that there's this website that collects all the startups or all the products that Google killed. There's like millions. Well, not millions, but thousands probably. So nothing beats shipping features, and it's for an engineer is heartbreaking to have the fruits of your labor being killed by Google because it doesn't meet the OKRs or the KPIs or whatever. So when you are a small startup, you have an impact. You are an engineer who ships features almost on a daily basis. That's why they don't use Scrum. They don't work in the sprint sort of cycle. Sprint cycle, like typical 2-week sprint cycle, is not frequent enough for them to ship features when you're an early stage startup. So there's a funny story around one of our clients. They are a big sort of audio company from the States, and one of their product managers quit just recently. And the reason why they quit was the team they were working on they were struggling with tech debt, so the thing that we just covered a few slides ago. And they weren't shipping features fast enough. And that product manager was all about shipping features. And so make sure that your pace of work, when you have a tech team, is exciting enough. Because at the end of the day, that's what we do. We get excited about actually shipping technology, not building technology. Ownership, we talked about. A lot of engineers have interests outside of just writing code or zeros and ones. Apple. I'm sort of still inside that Apple's walled garden. I still build iPhone apps myself, and so a lot of engineers like myself, they are very familiar with a document that Apple created, which is sort of the foundation of design of mobile apps, and it's called Apple Human Interface Guidelines. And so when I'm an engineer, not only do I would like to write code, but I would like also to have a say about certain aspects of the product that might not necessarily make sense to me because I know something that the product owner or the client does not know because they haven't read the Apple Human Interface Guidelines. Again, culture is your secret weapon. You can design your culture so that it's interesting to engineers, and please do, because this is one of the very few differentiators that actually matter to engineers, and this is something that you can actually beat Apple and Google and us with if you have a better culture than us. This is also something that is very specific to early stage startups. You know, I mean, of course, Google will pay you $40,000, you know, of equity every year, and that's fine. That's very sweet, of course. But when you are an early stage startup and you get, you know, like 3%, 5% after the IPO, that's going to be worth millions, and that's something that only is achievable in early stage startups, nowhere else. I have a lot of friends who were, you know, the early employees at Facebook, and there were highest number, you know, probably like 2,000, 3,000. So there were 3,000 people at Facebook before them. They got some, you know, equity package, and they're millionaires from that. A few hacks and tips. So just to close it off. So try to attract the folks where you excel. You know, if you're building, you know, the next whatever machine learning thing, try to attract the folks with, you know, with the ownership or the, you know, the unique culture that that you can create for them to, you know, to attract them. So, you know, there are some startups that rent. Well, it's probably not really viable right now, but before pandemic, there were startups that rented a villa in Bali, and, you know, they gave all their employees a room so they can, you know, write code in the beautiful scenery. I've seen it happen. So try to excel at places where Google cannot afford to. Google will not do a villa in Bali. You can. Again, you need a CTO. I'm going to repeat it over and over again, or a technical co-founder for that matter. These are not the same, by the way, but again, these are these two. Sure, the very crucial responsibility of owning the tech at your company. Take advantage of remote work. Again, I mean, the fact that we're here in Poland does not mean that we cannot have folks in the Philippines work for us, or, you know, anywhere else. Frankly, I mean, we have people in Italy, we have people in Philippines, we have some folks in the States. So again, there are, you know, if there's never been easier to hire people remotely than now. We have all the tools. We got through the initial sort of learning curve of, you know, can you hear me? Hey, dude, you're mute. Yeah, we're past that. So, you know, we're sort of at, you know, almost 100% of productivity while working remote, which is a great thing because, again, you don't have to limit yourself to, you know, to Warsaw's market or Polish market or Belarusian market. You can hire everywhere. Outsource stuff. Whatever is not mission critical for you as a startup is a great candidate to be outsourced. Your attention span is only that big and is only capable of doing so many things. And I know, again, I've been a founder. I've been an engineer. I've been a sales guy. I've had, you know, a hat of creative accountant, you know, when we needed to do some creative accounting. So again, outsource everything. Be very diligent about, you know, your attention, and whatever is not critical, try to, you know, push it out. Invest in younger generation. This is something that you have. This is sort of a double-edged sword, right? So I've had a case when I was mentoring a startup that had a CTO. He was fairly, you know, knowledgeable, but he surrounded himself with, I think, 3 junior engineers. It's a terrible mistake because they're going to eat up all your time, and the most valuable tech-wise person in the company was spending his time mentoring these guys, which is a great thing to do. It's very honorable, right? But you know, the primary objective of CTO is writing your code and building your tech, not mentoring your junior engineers. At least not 3. So you can have 1, right? You can have a dude who you're going to outsource, or, you know, delegate stuff that is not really meaningful, and he's going to learn his skills, and then he's going to sort of flower into a mid or a senior engineer, that's fine, but just try to not overdo it with junior guys. Finally, learn to code. It's a great experience. If your startup fails, at least you're going to be a very employable person, and then you can go back to slide number, I think 3, and get that really nice package from Google and yeah, make nice money. So that's the worst that can happen. So learn to code. It's not really that complicated, but there are also tools that will let you code without coding. There's this whole like no-code movement or low-code movement, which is, you know, like there are Y Combinator startups that are built right now with no-code and low-code tools that are collecting millions of dollars in funding, and literally that's the best thing you can do. So try to test your waters before, you know, hiring your tech team and spending, you know, multiple zeros of dollars, well, a lot of dollars for the time. That's all I have. Thank you for listening. If you would like to email me, that's my personal email, by the way. I'm always backlogged, but I'll get to your email if you would like to talk about something. I'm always there. There's a blog that I never write at, but I always drop it for the sake of it. The thing that I'm doing very recently is a podcast. It's not out yet, but if you drop your email over at hackathon.show, I'll let you know when it's out. The first episode should be out next week, and it's a show about building technology products fast. What a coincidence. And finally, I'm at Dusker on most of the social media networks, so like Facebook, Twitter, whatnot. Find me there. Q&A time.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
It's
Appreciate it.
fantastic. And I'm very curious about the culture. You mentioned that it's almost important to have a certain level of culture in tech teams. So, but also you have said that take advantages of the remote work. So my question is, how do you manage to support the needed level of culture in remote teams? And maybe you have some daily or weekly rituals, maybe stand-ups or other things.
Sure, it's a great question. So we, when we surveyed our folks, we're at about 80 people strong, and that's been steady for a while now. Before COVID hit, the number one thing that people said that's great about our company is the people. And we really wanted to retain that after COVID hit. So we've been experimenting with a lot of things to, you know, because, you know, like when you're working remotely, you don't have a water cooler, you cannot go. We've had a very nice, well, we still have a very nice office down in Meetup, which is just a great, you know, bar. There's bar after bar after bar, so you can just go drinking. And so it was really great to, you know, have an office there and just go out after work. And when COVID hit, like you've said, it's really hard to retain that human connection, right? Because everybody's just doing execution. They're doing, you know, whatever they have to do, and then they shut their laptop off. They go to another room and spend time with their family. And that's what I do also. So there are tools to do, you know, to address that actually. So you know, like to give you an example, we started doing company breakfasts at the office. So regardless of you know, whether you're working remotely or not, every Thursday we have a company breakfast, so you can swing by the office and at least eat the breakfast and go home. That's it. We do have like a Slack bot that randomly connects two people, you know, any two people from our company, and they have to do like a 30-minute call just to talk about whatever, which is a great thing. It's actually I was pretty skeptical about it. It sounds weird, right? When I talk about it.
Why not? It's cool.
Well, yeah, I know. But when I was sold on the idea, I thought it's weird. But I was desperate to give it a try, and it turns out it's really cool. I mean, like I get to talk to people that I never talk to, almost. And we talk about the most bizarre shit. So it's you know, I was talking to one of our project managers about about babies because she also has a little baby. So it was a, you know, sort of, it was like a 30-minute rant of like, hey, mine does that. It's all fucked up. No, mine is worse because mine doesn't sleep. So it was hilarious. So again, like a Slack bot, we do a company retreat every quarter. So we try to, you know, at least bring people together. So we're doing actually one tomorrow, which is going to be brutal, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a silver bullet to do that, but you have to try. Try different things.
What jellyfish?
You know what? I'm going to be honest. That's from the keynote template. I didn't change the picture. That's a good catch. So yeah, try different things. Make sure that you give them a chance. So don't pick up ideas and drop them after one try. Like let them, you know, run for a while. But I think that's the best I have. So yeah, again, try to create your unique culture. You know, like do I don't know, like Monday evening beers, or you know, somewhere in the city, or a picnic, or whatnot.
Monday morning beer.
Or Monday morning beers, mimosas, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have like a, you know, like there's no gold standard answer. Like we're still trying to find ourselves in this reality, but you know, we're trying hard. More questions are free. Go for
I
it.
have a few questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. And the first question is about no-code solutions such as Glide or Adala. What do you think of them? I mean, in terms of what do you need them for testing MVP, or you can even finish the product and post it to store? It's my question because I'm thinking about what to do next. As there are always lots of limits in these systems and these platforms. I don't know how to name them. Anyway, and yeah, this is the first question.
Okay, I'll take a stab at it because I'm going to forget it when you do the second one. I don't know the products that you've mentioned. There is one pretty well known called Bubble.io. Yeah, and that one is pretty powerful. So we actually, this is something that is very early stage of our company, but I believe that within a year, we might actually turn out having a no-code department, a low-code department, because it's so here's the thing, you have to take a compromise on the future, you know, like it's not going to be as polished as it would be if you have been building it from ground up, right? However, building things in Bubble takes weeks. You know, we're doing a sort of like a test project with one of our customers, and we are building something that they are selling to major US banks in 8 weeks. So to answer your question, you can build something that actually works. I know of one, or actually two, Y Combinator startups that got to Y Combinator while being built on Bubble. And they got funding. They got funded, and once they got funded, of course they're going to rebuild certain aspects of their technology that, you know, that just don't make sense on Bubble, or they don't fit on Bubble, or they are not achievable on Bubble. But you know, I mean, in software engineering, there is a lot of, you know, sort of reinventing the wheel, right? You know, every app has an onboarding flow, right? And you're just, you know, like there are engineers building it because, you know, you have to have it, but it's the same fucking thing all over again, right? You have these everywhere. So I even though it's sort of, you know, like it's a thing that competes with my skill set almost directly because I'm an engineer, I think there is a bright future for low-code and no-code solutions. Totally.
Thank you. The second question.
Go for it.
Yeah. So when is it time to fire a developer? I mean, what are the triggers? I mean, for instance, there is a deadline and they skipped like 3 times and then bye because you said fire fast. Maybe some like hacks.
That's a bad one. Yeah, I don't think that there is like a one single you know, milestone where you should decide on, or you know, firing an engineer. However, you know, I can give you a few examples, probably off air, about, you know, when we made a decision to fire someone. I think when it becomes a risk to whatever you're doing, right? So when they miss a deadline, try to think about, you know, like, number one, was the deadline doable or achievable? Like, what was the sort of the things that were out of their control that also contributed to, you know, you missing the deadline? I wouldn't necessarily say that, you know, like, missing a deadline is all on the engineers, right? Because you have a project manager or a scrum master or a product owner or a product manager. They're all involved, right? In you know, in managing the backlog that you have to do, and deadlines and roadmaps and whatnot. But when it becomes a habit, that's another story, right? And this is something that you at least should look closely at. Estimating software is a whole another story, right? No engineers can accurately estimate their work. You know, it never happens. Trust me, I've been in this industry for a very long time.
Sometimes even engineers can't estimate them.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, it's really, really hard, right? And you know,
Code review is subscience.
it's with Scrum at least. You know, like there's this whole idea of story points and, you know, the retrospective, and after a few sprints, you have like at least a perceived velocity, so it's somewhat accurate, but it's not accurate. so you know, you can get close to accuracy, but again, you will miss deadlines, and it's not on engineers' fault always. However, you know, when it becomes a threat to what you're doing, and you'll know, right? You'll see that they're slacking around, or like it was in that slide, you know, the guy who, you know, was employed at like 5 different companies. You'll know. Or reach out to me, I'll tell you. Right?
Yeah,
Done? Thank
this
you.
is question.
Oh, one more?
No, other people, yeah, I've already done.
Right.